yourself a cold one.
They strike 'em, huh?
And listen to Ross Tucker break down the top college prospects on another tasty edition of The College Draft.
Yeah, it's Daddy Soda time here on the College Draft Podcast, presented, of course, by DraftKings. You guys know the deal. Use code Ross for whatever you do on the DraftKings Sportsbook. Happy Memorial Day to one and all. I hope you guys have a terrific holiday. Enjoy not having to work today like Emory and I are. Listen, this is the perfect thing to play while you're out at the pool or grilling or having some daddy sodas. Why not go ahead and just have the College Draft Podcast with Ross Tucker and Emory Hunt playing in the background? That is what your wife wants. That's what your kids want. They want to hear about the NFC West draft picks while they're enjoying their day. Thank you so much for hopping aboard, as always. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman. You know that. 5 teams, 7 years. Thank goodness, because I don't think I would have been able to get these color commentary gigs with CBS and the Eagles and Westwood One on the radio if it weren't for that. And I certainly wouldn't have been able to get this podcast network up and running. Hopefully a bunch of you also listen or watch the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, the Even Money Betting Podcast, the Fantasy Feast Podcast. You can, of course, watch youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL, or just check out the social media clips. Those are like the 3 or 4 things that Emory says that I find to be the most compelling content from the show. The best of the best, if you will, which is exactly what Emory Hunt is. Check him out on social media at FBall Game Plan on Twitter, Football Game Plan on YouTube, and of course, to me, I'll say this probably through the preseason games. It is not too late to get the draft guide. Footballgameplan.com/2024 draft guide. If you just want to have in-depth scouting reports on every rookie on your team's roster, that's what Emory's guide can provide you with. Footballgameplan.com/2024 draft guide. All right, Emory. We're wrapping up the NFC today. And again, this is what we do. We go through after the draft and we just get Emory's thoughts on every pick that your team made and every pick that the other teams in your team's division made, and really the entire NFL. Because I want to know what Emory thought of all these picks. Why not, right? I might be doing some of their games this year. So today we'll do the NFC West, Emory. To wrap that up, we will start with the Arizona Cardinals. You know, we've talked about Marvin Harrison Jr., and I think we talked about Darius Robinson. What was your thoughts on Darius Robinson again, Emory?
He was my number 2 5 tech. So far, based off the Marvin Harrison Jr. selection and then the Darius Robinson selection, the Cardinals are off to a great start. Honestly, Ross, I thought they had the best draft by anyone. They knocked it out the park, and we'll get into it as we go along.
Wow. Well, so let's get into it. Let's start with round 2, where they took Max Melton. I know you were a fan of his, the corner from Rutgers.
Yeah, Max Melton, I had an 81 grade on. 82. No, I'm sorry. I stand corrected. He was my number 1 boundary corner with an 84.5 grade. So I love this pick because we talked about it. Feisty, aggressive, ready to go from day one. And again, Rutgers defensive backs, corners in particular, are phenomenal football players. And the Cardinals got themselves a step-in starter. So right off the bat, first 3 picks, starter with the receivers, starter on the defensive line, starter at cornerback. I told you they knocked it out the park so far.
Well, and I always mention this. Emory obviously was a Division I FBS running back. Your thoughts on their selection of Trey Benson in the second round, the running back from Florida State?
Gives them a starter in waiting, because I hate seeing backup. Starter in waiting, because he started to get his groove back. He was a tremendous recruit coming out of high school, tore up his knee insanely at Oregon. Spoke with him at the combine, finally felt like he said, I got back to myself at Florida State, and he showed that last year. Good burst, good explosiveness. And again, we know they love a lead dog in their backfield, and he's going to be their lead dog in waiting. Probably could even usurp Connor by season's end.
All right, what about the 3 picks in the 3rd round? The first 2, couple of Illinois guys. Isaiah Adams was pick 71. Isaiah was on the Ross Tucker football podcast a couple weeks ago. He was the guy that said he got drafted higher than he was expecting. You never hear a guy say that. Good for him. And then they took his teammate, Tip Ryman, the big tight end who can run, from Illinois after that. And then they took Elijah Jones, the corner from Boston College. But let's start with the 2 guys that played from Illinois.
Yeah, Ryman is going to be a good blocker for them, I feel like. But listen, if Emory Hunt was in charge of a football team, Isaiah Adams would have gone way earlier than he would have thought as well, because he was my number 3 guard with a 79 grade. So I loved Adams because of his versatility and what he brought to the table. So again, Arizona, who probably bought the football game plan 2024 draft guide, is killing it right now with these selections. And I had a 76 grade on Elijah Jones, a corner out of Boston College. Long, lengthy, athletic corner that has good ball skills, can play through the receiver to bat the ball away. Checking boxes, Arizona. I got to go back and see if I had a lot of orders coming out of the Southwest.
Their next couple picks, at safety, they took Dadrion Taylor-Demerson from Texas Tech, and then an edge rusher from Clemson, Xavier Thomas. I remember I called his game in the U.S. Army Bowl. He looked like he was built like an NFL D end in high school.
Yeah, DTD, as he's effectively known, Dadrion Taylor-Demerson was my number 2 combo safety. So a guy that I feel like that can dip down inside, cover some receivers, some big receivers, play kind of, that slot corner role, but gives you good strength versus the run, cat-like quickness, able to ping pong around the back end. So loving what Arizona did. And Xavier Thomas, you talked about out of Clemson. Again, they needed depth along that defense. Defensively is where they had to get better. And I thought getting Thomas this far out was someone that can provide that swing depth, that situational rusher. And they got a good, value here in round 5.
What about their last 3 picks? Christian Jones, the offensive tackle from Texas, Palmer, the wide receiver from UAB, and Jaden Davis, a DB from Miami.
Palmer was my number 1 inside receiver with a 76 grade. I thought he had one of the better weeks at the Hula Bowl and got the call up at the East West Shrine Bowl. He had one of the more memorable Hula Bowl performances. He was baking these corners all throughout the practice. Had an injury that he suffered during that week, but it got him. He was healthy enough to where he got the call up to the Shrine Bowl. But he was out there like a man amongst boys, 6'1", 210. But I do think he could play that tight, nasty split type receiver within his offense. So I was a big fan of him. And you think about everybody else. Who else you brought up You said,
yeah, Christian Jones, the tackle from Texas, Jaden Davis, the DB from Miami.
Jones was a big tackle prospect, and we know a lot of people loved him coming out of Texas. And so here's someone, 75 grade. So this was a very good tackle class. To be able to get someone like him way down in round 5, I thought was like fantastic. So it helps give them a future starter in waiting at some point, but good depth here on the outside. So to me, yes, another outstanding selection by the Arizona Cardinals because, as I said before, they are killing it. And Jaden Davis was a very good slot corner. They added more depth to the secondary.
Did you like any of their undrafted guys, Emory?
I was shocked that Xavier Weaver out of Colorado went undrafted because he was a fantastic wideout who was the number 1 target for QB1, clear-cut QB1 of 2025 and Shedeur Sanders. So they got Weaver who can play and also can help them out on special teams. And Miles Murphy, how long has he's been in school, but he's been productive and he gives them more good depth on the defensive line. So from start to finish, I was a big fan of what the Cardinals did.
What about the Rams? Let's get to the LA Rams. You know, it's funny because people always say F them picks with the Rams. They had a ton of picks. I mean, they have just stockpiled picks over the years with the compensatory picks. They went back-to-back Florida State guys that didn't start at Florida State with their 2 D linemen, Jared Verse, the edge rusher from Florida State via Albany, Braden Fisk, the D tackle from Florida State via Western Michigan. And then they got into some of these other guys. 3rd round, Blake Corum, the running back from Michigan, and Cam Kitchens, the safety from Miami, Emory.
Yeah, Verse and Fisk were 2 guys I had 80 grades on. Fisk, I had an 80. Verse had an 81 grade. So they knocked it out the park there. My number 2, 4-3 defensive end, my number 2 defensive tackle. So the Rams aced the 1st round, in my opinion. Then I like Blake Corum because it shows you they have a type. You go deeper in the depth chart, Ronnie Rivers is built like Blake Corum, who's built like Kyron Williams. So they have a type at running back. They have a factory going on with these shorter, squatty guys, and Corum helps their running game stay on pace, in my opinion. And Cameron Kitchens was a very underrated player coming out of Miami. Someone that I think can cover, can run up and hit, unafraid to play in the alley very well. And we know they do a good job. Again, I love that the Rams live by the motto, size is not a skill, because they got a bunch of these guys that don't meet the prototypical height, weight type standard, but they go out there and play good football because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing.
Brennan Jackson, an edge rusher from Washington State, and Tyler Davis, D tackle from Clemson, were their next 2 picks.
Brennan Jackson and Tyler Davis, I feel like, played a decade in college at their respective universities, right? Jackson was a tremendous edge rusher for Washington State. And Davis, we've seen a lot of him over the course of his career. But when you have those 2 guys in particular, you're bringing in a ton of experience. So these are game-ready players, guys that can step in as rookies and play a lot of minutes, because they've played a lot of games in college. So I thought this was 2 good value depth picks for the Rams.
Not talking about the kicker from Stanford. The last 3 picks, Jordan Whittington, wide receiver, Texas. I mean, how does Texas still have more wide receivers getting drafted? Bo Limmer, the center from Arkansas, and KT Leviston, the other guard from K-State.
Limmer was my number 9 center. I had a 75.5 grade on him. Really good combo blocker, shows proficiency in executing those blocks and being able to climb to the second level. So I think he helps spearhead their run game. We know how the Rams want to run the football. We know how good they are on the interior. Good depth piece right there for the Rams. And Whittington, I feel like, is going to be your quintessential core special teamer. I mean, he could play. He was a running back first, then turn a receiver, and perform well. But he's one of those guys that you see him doing great things outside of the football, without the football, and that's the mark of a guy that you want on your team, and he makes for a perfect special team.
What do we got in terms of undrafted free agents for the Rams, Emory?
Well, this is where the Rams usually kill it, but we saw them finally have a 1st-round pick, so they were able to knock it out the park there. But no one really of note, per se, that really stood out because of how deep this roster is. And I find it's going to be tough for one of these undrafted rookie free agents to make hay. But this is where the Rams usually knock it out the park. But it's just tough to really see someone coming in, except maybe Drake Stoops, because he's a coach's kid. Another core special team that can help out at receiver. We'll see.
Tell you what jumps out to me. I can't believe we're already a couple weeks away from Father's Day. That is nuts. Why doesn't Father's Day, Emory, get the love that Mother's Day does? I've never understood that. Mother's Day is like a holiday. Everybody talks about it. Father's Day, people don't even realize it's Father's Day till the end of the day that they're like, oh, yeah, Dad, sorry. Don't be like that. Dads are awesome. I'm a dad. MyFrontPageStory.com. Listen, everybody listening or watching on YouTube, I know for a fact your dad loves a newspaper. Every dad loves the newspaper. Give him the front page treatment. MyFrontPageStory.com. MyFrontPageStory.com. I guarantee your dad will love it, especially if there's quotes from the kids saying how great he is and how much they love him. Your dad will cry. He's probably not a sentimental guy, but he'll cry. MyFrontPageStory.com. All right, let's dive into, Emory, the Niners. They got a pretty good squad, to say the least. And I don't really remember what you said about their first-round pick, Ricky Pearsall, Emory.
Firstly, Ross, I may not be a dad, but judging by the landscape of this football media thing, I fathered a lot of you guys' styles out there. So send my cards for Father's Day as well. But I was a big Ricky Pearsall fan, and this goes back to when you were watching Anthony Richardson's game. You were like, man, Pearsall's the only one out there that's just balling, catching passes, because everyone else was dropping it. So Pearsall is a fantastic receiver. He gets open, not afraid to challenge at the top of the route, and also the top of the, above the rim. So this is a very good receiver for San Francisco. I thought they got a good one in round one. It's late round one, tomato. You got a good player. That's all that counts.
Day 2, Friday night, they took Renardo Green, the corner from FSU, and Dominic Puny, the guard from Kansas.
I love Puny. I thought he was a fantastic pick. One of my favorite players to grade over the course of the game, because you're watching Kansas football and they were really doing good jobs. And Puny was someone that can play, I guess, inside or outside. But Green was my number 3 boundary corner. Had a 79.5 grade on him. First line, smart corner who has a great understanding of route concepts. So when you have that level of understanding and you have the ball skills and instincts, Florida State's defense legitimately was championship caliber. There's a bunch of guys that I had high grades on, and Green was one of them. I thought this was an outstanding pick because I felt like San Francisco needed help in the secondary.
Round 4, they had 3 picks, Emory, in round 4. They had Malik Mustafa, the safety from Wake Forest, Isaac Guerendo, the running back from Louisville. I'm curious to get your thoughts on him. A lot of people were talking about him for whatever reason in the lead up to the draft. And then Jacob Cowing, wide receiver from Arizona.
Guerendo was my number 3 running back, so I had like a starter grade on him. So I feel like he fits. He's an explosive player, former kickoff return specialist. So he understands how to mash the gas with the acceleration and hit the home run. He's done that before in his career. I think this was an underrated selection. It wouldn't surprise me to see him kind of vie for that RB2 role behind McCaffrey. Cowing, explosive as all get out, shorter receiver, but that's fine. He breaks a lot of tackles. He's able to weave his way through the defense and make things happen. And Mustafa was one of my favorite, defensive backs. Safety, my 5th rated strong safety with a 77 grade. There's one clip out there that I think Louis Riddick posted, but I know
yes.
Well, he came from Connecticut and got to the backfield in a flash. Like that right there is what we're talking about. We're saying playing downhill, and he had a bunch of those type of plays on film. Mustafa is phenomenal. So this is someone, again, when they lost Hufanga, it showed up. They missed that impact. Well, they won't have that issue now because they have someone that plays a lot like Hufanga with his hair on fire to back him up in case he is out for a game or a play.
I forget the exact numbers, but it was like when the ball was snapped, he was at like 13 yards depth, and he made the tackle for -2 on like an ISO run to the left. like that should not be possible. I mean, you want to talk about shot out of a cannon and playing downhill. Anything on their last 2 picks? Round 6, Jarrett Kingston, guard, USC. Round 7, another Florida State defender, Tatum Bethune, a linebacker.
He was my number 10 outside linebacker, but I graded him as a weak side backer with a 75 grade. So that tells you, Ross, like this defense, had they got the opportunity to go to the postseason, they would have done some crazy things. Quick twitch backer, has good short area burst, which makes him a solid sideline to sideline guy. So it sounds a lot like what they had in Greenlaw and what they value at the position. You got to be quick twitch because you got to be able to run, and he can definitely do that and make plays as well.
What do we have on the undrafted free agent line for the Niners?
Terrell Owens' kid that no one talked about until, remember I talked about earlier how I followed a lot of people's styles. Well, again, everyone started talking about Owens after they found out he was Terrell Owens' son and at the local 49ers Pro Day. But we talked about him before, and he is someone that is 6'1", 205 pounds, very good run after the catch skills, underutilized at Missouri State. He has a chance to make this team and make an impact. He's going to be someone that we're going to be talking about a lot of during training camp and preseason. He's a fantastic football player. Go back and check the tweets at F-Ball Game Plan. We were talking about him last year, Ross.
You know how mentally tough you got to be like T.O.'s son or Jerry Rice's son and still play football? I mean, because it's like everybody expects you to, and then if you're not as good as your dad, it's like that cannot be easy.
And you're right, because this was the draft for the Suns, right? Chris Jenkins, all these guys, right? But how about them also signing Cody Schrader of Missouri, who went undrafted, who led the SEC in rushing?
Yeah, why wasn't he ranked higher? Emory, I'm glad you said that.
I have no clue, because I remember tweeting this out last summer when we were prepping for, this upcoming season. Like, I hadn't seen everybody, Ross. I hadn't seen, everybody in the country play. But from what I just watched, this dude's the best in pass pro as a tailback in the country, period. So you combine that with his ability to run the football. He dominated at Truman State, walked on at Missouri, got on the field. I asked him about this at the combine. He said he knew he had to excel at pass pro to get on the field, to get an opportunity to play. He did that, and with his running skill, he was able to maximize that opportunity. So I'm a big fan of Cody Schrader and what he was able to do. And the San Francisco 49ers got themselves yet another talented damn tailback.
The Seahawks are last, but certainly not least. They had a bunch of picks, and this was very much a John Schneider draft. He likes the big guys. He got Byron Murphy, the D tackle from Texas, in the first round. Then in the third round, a guy I called at least 5 of his games the last few years, Christian Haynes, the guard from UConn.
Yeah, very good contact power. Good job with striking with a purpose. A lot of guys kind of just strike for the sake of striking, but he's trying to push you out the way. UConn's run game was very solid, man. Like, especially if you go back and watch their first game against NC State, they were running up and down that field against the Wolfpack, and I thought Haynes was someone that had a really good career, also had a solid Senior Bowl week as well.
Round 4, Tyrese Knight, a linebacker from UTEP, and A.J. Barner, the tight end from Michigan.
Knight was one of my favorite backers to watch because he hits with a purpose too. And UTEP, it's been the last 3-4 years. UTEP has been, on the come up. They've been a nuisance, and their defense and run game has been wide. If you can run the football, on the flip side, you're going to be able to play good run defense. Knight was someone that really could hammer downhill, pun intended, with the UTEP minor, pickaxe or whatever it is. And so I thought he did a good job of being that good thumper. And he hits you, and he has a lot of those jacked up hits that, of the old days that we would have loved to highlight. So he's a very good backer. They needed someone like that could bring the wood.
Out of their next 3 picks, Nehemiah Pritchett, cornerback from Auburn, a guard from Utah, Polynesian guy, Satoa Lamea, and then another corner from Auburn, DJ James. You don't see a team take back-to-back corners from the same college very often.
Right, and it's interesting because James, to me, was very underrated. He was my number 4 field corner with an 81 grade. So I love DJ James as a prospect. Legit speed and acceleration. So he can click and close with anybody. He can run with anybody. And so we know their secondary was an issue last year. They went out there and tried to rectify. They got dudes back there in the secondary. Just have to stay healthy. I thought getting James this far down in the draft, along with his teammate Pritchett, was a really good pickup for Seattle.
What about Michael Jarrell, the offensive tackle from Findlay, as well as any of the undrafted free agents, Emory?
He had a very good Hula Bowl, and it's important for guys like him to come in and, make sure you stand out. He came from D2, went to the Hula Bowl. I had a 75 grade on him, and it was impressive. because he was able to sit in the chair versus a bull rush, do a great job in one-on-ones consistently, and that's what you want to see. He can grow into the position, but he played a very good Division II conference in a GMAC, the Great Midwestern Athletic Conference. He was their Offensive Lineman of the Year. He was a 3-time All-Conference performer. So to have those accolades and go to the Hula Bowl, I thought he did really well. I was a big fan of what he did down there in Orlando.
I love it. The keg is kicked. We're all tapped out.
Thanks for tuning in to College Draft. Make sure to also check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Even Money, and Fantasy Feast, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.